Good evening, and welcome to our daily devotional reading. I hope you had a good day. I hope you're ready to calm down, quiet your mind, quiet your heart. Let the anxieties of the day float away. Turn inward and listen to Plato. Socrates continuing speaking his apology. And as you will not easily find another like me, I would advise you to spare me. I dare say that you may feel irritated at being suddenly awakened when you are caught napping, and you may think that if you were to strike me dead, as Annatus advises, which you easily might, then you would sleep on for the remainder of your lives, unless God in his care of you gives you another gadfly. And that I am given to you by God is proved by this. But if I had been like other men, I should not have neglected all my own concerns, or patiently seen the neglect of them during all these years, and have been doing yours, coming to you individually like a father or elder brother, exhorting you to regard virtue. This I say would not be like human nature, and had I gained anything, or in my exhortations had been paid, there would have been some sense in that. But now, as you will perceive, not even the impudence of my accusers dares to say that I have ever exacted or sought pay of anyone. They have no witness of that. And I have a witness of the truth that I say, my poverty is sufficient witness. Someone may wonder why I go about in private giving advice and busying myself with the concerns of others, but do not venture to come forward in public and advise the state. I will tell you the reason of this. You had often heard me speak of an oracle or sign which comes to me, and is the divinity which Meletus ridiculed in the indictment. The sign I have had ever since I was a child. The sign is a voice which comes to me and always forbids me to do something which I am going to do. But never commands me to do anything. And this is what stands in the way of being a politician. And rightly, I think. For I am certain, O men of Athens, that if I had engaged in politics, I should have perished long ago, and done no good either to you or to myself. And don't be offended at my telling you the truth, for the truth is that no man who goes to war with you or any other multitude, honestly struggling against the commission of unrighteousness and wrong in the state, will save his life. He who will really fight for the right, if he would live even for a little while, must have a private station and not a public one. I can give you as proofs of this not words only but deeds, which you value more than words. Let me tell you a passage of my own life, which will prove to you that I should never have yielded to injustice from any fear of death, and that if I had not yielded, I should have died at once. I will tell you a story, tasteless perhaps, and commonplace, but nevertheless true. The only office of state which I ever held, O men of Athens, was that of senator. The tribe Antiochus, which is my tribe, had the presidency at the trial of the generals who had not taken up the bodies of the slain after the battle of Aginusai, and you proposed to try them all together, which was illegal, as you all fought afterwards. But at the time I was the only one of the Prytanes who was opposed to the illegality, and I gave my vote against you. And when the orators threatened to impeach and arrest me, and have me taken away, and you called and shouted, I made up my mind that I would run the risk, having law and justice with me, rather than take part in your injustice, because I feared imprisonment and death. This happened in the days of the democracy. But when the oligarchy of the 30 was in power, they sent for me and 4 others into the rotunda and bade us bring Leon the Salamanian from Salamis, and you wanted to execute him. This was a specimen of the sort of commands which they were always giving with the view of implicating as many as possible in their crimes. And then I showed, not in words only but in deed, that if I may be allowed to use such an expression, I cared not a straw for death, and that my only fear was the fear of doing an unrighteous or unholy thing. For the strong arm of that oppressive power did not frighten me into doing wrong. And when we came out of the rotunda, the other 4 went to Salamis and fetched Leon, but I went quietly home. For which I might have lost my life, had not the power of the 30 shortly afterwards come to an end. And to this many will witness. Now do you really imagine that I could have survived all these years? If I had led a public life, supposing that, like a good man, I had always supported the right and had made justice, as I ought, the first thing? No, indeed, men of Athens, neither I nor any other. But I have been always the same in all my actions, public as well as private. And never have I yielded any base compliance to those who are slanderously termed my disciples, or to any other. For the truth is that I have no regular disciples, but if anyone likes to come and hear me while I am pursuing my mission, whether he be young or old, he may freely come. Nor do I converse with those who pay only, and not with those who do not pay, but anyone, whether he be rich or poor, may ask and answer me and listen to my words. And whether he turns out to be a bad man or a good one, that cannot be justly laid to my charge, and I never taught him anything. And if anyone says that he has ever learned or heard anything from me in private, which all the world has not heard, I should like you to know that he is speaking an untruth. But I shall be asked, why do people delight in continually conversing with you? I have told you already, Athenians, the whole truth about this. They like to hear the cross-examination of the pretenders to wisdom. There is amusement in this. And this is a duty which the God has imposed upon me, as I am assured by oracles, visions, and in every sort of way in which the will of divine power has ever signified to anyone. This is true, O Athenians, or if not true, would be soon refuted. For if I am really corrupting the youth, and have corrupted some of them already, those of them who have grown up and have become sensible that I gave them bad advice in the days of their youth should come forward as accusers and take their revenge. And if they do not like to come themselves, some of their relatives, fathers, brothers, or other kinsmen, should say what evil their family suffered at my hands. Now is their time. Many of them you see in the court. There is Crito, who is of the same age and of the same deme with myself. And there is Critobulus, his son, whom I also see. Then again there is Lysanias of Spaetus, who is the father of Scinis. He is present, and also there is Anthithon of Cephisus, who is the father of Epigenes, and there are the brothers of several whom you have associated with me. There is Nicostratus, the son of Teudotus, and the brother of Teudotus. Now Teudotus himself is dead, and therefore he, at any rate, will not seek to stop him. And there is Paralus, the son of Demodocus, who had a brother Tierges, and Idiomantus, the son of Ariston, whose brother Plato is present. And Artudorus, who is the brother of Apollodorus, whom I also see. I might mention a great many others, any of whom Meletus should have produced as witnesses in the course of his speech. And let him still produce them, if he has forgotten. I will make way for him. And let him say if he has any testimony of the sort which he can produce. Nay, Athenians, the very opposite is truth. For all these are ready to witness on behalf of the corrupter, of the destroyer of their kindred, as Meletus and Anatus call me, not the corrupted youth only. There might have been a motive for that, but their uncorrupted elder relatives. Why should they too support me with their testimony? Why indeed, except for the sake of truth and justice, and because they know that I am speaking the truth, and that Meletus is lying. Well, Athenians, this and the like of this is nearly all the defense which I have to offer. Yet a word more. Perhaps there may be someone who is offended at me when he calls to mind how he himself, on a similar or even a less serious occasion, had recourse to prayers and supplications with many tears, and how he produced his children in court, which was a moving spectacle, together with the string of his relations and friends, whereas I, when probably in danger of my life, will do none of these things. Perhaps this may come into his mind, and he may be set against me and vote in anger because he is displeased at this. Now if there be such a person among you, which I am far from affirming, I may fairly reply to him, my friend, I am a man, and like other men a creature of flesh and blood, and not of wood or stone, as Homer says. And I have a family, yes, and sons. O Athenians, 3 in number, one of whom is growing up, and the two others are still young. And yet I will not bring any of them hither in order to petition you for an acquittal. And why not? Not from any self-will or disregard of you. Whether I am or am not afraid of death is another question, of which I will not now speak. But my reason simply is that I feel such conduct to be discreditable to myself and you and the whole state. One who has reached my years, 70, and who has a name for wisdom, whether deserved or not, ought not to debase himself. At any rate, the world has decided that Socrates is in some way superior to other men. And if those among you who are said to be superior in wisdom and courage and of other virtue demean themselves in this way, how shameful is their conduct! I have seen men of reputation, when they have been condemned, behaving in the strangest manner. They seemed to fancy that they were going to suffer something dreadful if they died, and that they could be immortal if you only allowed them to live. And I think that they were a dishonor to the state, and that any stranger coming in would say of them that the most eminent of men of Athens, to whom the Athenians themselves give honor and command, are no better than woman. And I say that these things ought not to be done by those of us who are of reputation. And if they are done, you ought not to permit them. You ought rather to show that you are more inclined to condemn, not the man who is quiet, but the man who gets up a doleful scene and makes his city ridiculous. But setting aside the question of dishonor, there seems to be something wrong in petitioning a judge and thus procuring an acquittal instead of informing and convincing him. For his duty is not to make a present of justice, but to give judgment, and he has sworn that he will judge according to the laws, and not according to his own good pleasure. And neither he nor we should get into the habit of perjuring ourselves. There can be no piety in that. Do not then require me to do what I consider dishonorable and impious and wrong, especially now, when I am being tried for impiety on the indictment of Meletus. For if, O men of Athens, by force of persuasion and entreaty I could overpower your oaths, then I should be teaching you to believe that there are no gods, and convict myself, in my own defense, of not believing in them. But that is not the case, for I do believe that they are gods, and in a far higher sense than that in which any of my accusers believe in them. And to you and to God I commit my cause, to be determined by you, as is best for you and me. Thus far our scripture for the evening. As a woman, I got a bit teary-eyed reading that, and my nose tends to get a bit red when I get emotional. So Sarah, my darling friend, commented on a video on piety that piety could be service-orientated attention. And it seems to be that is indeed what Socrates is speaking of here, when he speaks of the value that he added to Athens. And honestly, would we have held Athens in as high regards as we do if it wasn't for Socrates and Plato? So Socrates had a point. He had his divine sign, the voice that stopped him, and now I've seen that indeed I have also read and not only heard that this divine sign told him no at times, but never told him what to do, which is maybe a very safe way to proceed. What is this divine sign? I had to think of Jordan Peterson a lot today, not only because he was supposed to be in Amsterdam this weekend, but I read this earlier to block off the passage. And I had to think of him a lot. Also, amongst other things, of his idea of consciousness being God. I'm not pretending to understand the man. I think I have better odds of understanding Plato. But it does sound as if Socrates is speaking of something like conscience, not consciousness, his conscience in this passage. I responded once to something when I heard Jordan say that if he thinks I can't remember, but something about there being more than just the conscious speaking to us, conscience. But if the only voice you've ever heard is only your conscience, and if you do not know to distinguish between the different voices, and let me be clear, I generally speak of that voice which is not a voice when I refer to this. Then I pity him, I said. But I don't know, because it's a very strange thing for someone to say who does not believe in anything higher, not even in the self. Because one could say that that is the higher self that is communicating with us. The self from the future. The self on a different plane. But that gets us way too deep into the metaphysics and into the propositional knowledge. So the better question is, how do we respond to our conscience, to that voice which is not a voice in our head? Because it can be dangerous. I've been watching Criminal Minds, and it can be really dangerous for all people to listen to the voices in their heads. And then I think interaction with fellow human beings is incredibly important to balance that inner voices. Now, many people, Socrates being one, Abraham being another, went against what most people would have advised. And then they're held as heroes later. But the safest path is always to act in community, or at least with one other to know, which you know in person. Joe Foley talked about parasocial relationships recently. And if you only find people online who obviously agree with you, or with, God forbid, ChatGPT, will definitely agree with you and think you're the smartest person who've ever lived. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to actual human beings. Or, because that's the other thing I was thinking about. I was also thinking about how Jordan, in many ways, parallels Socrates. And I don't mean for this to be some sort of hero worship. Our paths diverged many years ago. But he was my first alive parasocial crush. I fell in love with Dostoevsky as a teenager. I think he was my first, after reading The Idiot. And I mean real love, like I would find pictures of Dostoevsky and stare into his eyes. And there were many other, quite a number of years ago, before I even knew about John, I fell in love with Spinoza. And I posted something about that on Facebook. And a very dear friend of mine who has known me since school commented that I've always had a thing for dead dudes. And then Jordan happened. And he was still alive, is still alive. It's a bit more awkward when they're still alive. But hey, I actually think, I was thinking about this today after watching Joe's video. It's almost like parasocial relationships and loving the people that actually do not know of your existence feels very similar to that gratitude you feel as a non-believer, someone who, if not explicitly state that there are no gods, at least doubt the existence of gods. I am an agnostic myself. I wouldn't call myself I tried atheism for about a year. I was capable of doing that. It really doesn't work for me. Agnosticism works very well for me. But even then, when you feel so grateful for your life, for particular things in your life, you have no one to direct it to, and yet not feeling that gratitude would feel somehow wrong. And I think in the same way, the parasocial love we feel for people, it would be wrong not to love Jordan Peterson. For many people, he has called us onto a path. Me and one of my friends like to refer to him as the call to adventure. He has called so many of us onto a path that led us to beautiful places. My life would not have been half the adventure that it is if it wasn't for him. So how could I not love him? Jordan, I do wish you were here. And may whichever gods are watching over you heal you and allow you to return to us in good health and good spirits. Plato is present in this dialogue and in no other, except like as a play of words, or simply mentioning that he's absent. And it is maybe, I was thinking as I was reading now, it is as Socrates is calling up those who can vouch for him, who can witness either against him or for him, that Plato is mentioned. And then Plato spent the rest of his life vouching for Socrates. The Stoic idea of not being like a woman could be said to be found in these words of Socrates, though for me it's more an Epicurean thing that's shining through. Also, in other places, I recently read it in the Laws. The idea of being afraid of death or valuing life higher than the good life is quite against Platonic virtues. Fearing death is what Socrates seems to indicate as something that is unwise. And yet, his inner voice did not allow him to go into politics because he desired him to stay a little bit longer long enough to have this radical impact on Plato, so that we, 2,500 plus years later, can have a parasocial relationship with both Socrates and, even more strangely, with Plato. There is a time and place for everything. And may we learn how to dance with the rhythms that are playing around us. May we learn how to embrace our fate, amor fati. And thank God, or the gods, the powers that be, life, just being lucky, for those extraordinary people who has had such an extraordinary impact on our lives. May the gods keep them safe. And may the spirit of Sophia be with you.